Hey, Drew.
Hey.
See what I can do here. Do I trying to see how I can set us up with a gallery thing?
I need to learn your secret to not have any glare on the glasses.
Oh, I believe me, I've got my own set of glare. Trust me, in this one.
Yes,
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
There, right.
Can you guys hear me okay? This is Rich.
Hey, Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can't see me, but I am here. I'm in a room with a bunch of patrons who are visiting the museum, and they're going to be watching the program with us. They may have questions, and what we'll do is we'll just let Drew know when they have questions, and then we can elevate them, and you'll be able to see them and talk to them.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to go back on mute.
Got it. Thank you.
I put on my watch here too, Drew, just so I know, to give myself an hour starting at 5:30, and I will time myself to certain extents of things. I think this is going to be a really good way to do things.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Thank you.
It'll be like, okay, I've spent too much on that time. Well, let's moving on, Bob.
So speaking of that, I guess I'm running the PowerPoint. Is that correct?
I guess so.
Okay.
Stephanie's gonna do that.
Stephanie said she could do it if we needed her to.
Well, I already have it up and queued, so just let me know. If I'm behind, just let me know and I'll advance it. But I'll be here to make sure that you're seeing what you're supposed to be seeing.
Boy, better watch that. just talking to Bob Peake's son, which is, I mean, his son Thomas Peake, friends with him. He's a good guy.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken with him in a while.
Yeah, he's fabulous. His father's a fabulous artist. Oh,
Yes, for sure. Truly a master.
We'll start in a minute here.
Is this going to be sort of a gallery display, or is it going to be, it's going to be displayed sort of what we're seeing right here? Should be this way, right? Yeah. Okay.
Bob, I think it will be this way. Yes.
Okay. That sounds great. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
As I was saying to Drew, I've taken my watch off and I'm going to put it here to time myself as I'm talking.
Thank you. And also, there I'm getting more chairs for people because there's more people than we thought. So just they'll give me a little heads up, but we'll start.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not surprising at all, Bob.
It just means if we go over a little bit, we'll just build the time in. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
We have a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I did a Zoom with a director friend of mine I'm working with on something, and we were planning for 1 hour and it turned into four, and I'm like, oh my God.
Sounds like it was a good conversation.
Oh, it's great. And we're going to do another one this week. So it was really great. There we go.
We can start. Can you all hear me?
Oh, all right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started then.
And then I'll start sharing the screen when we're ready to get into the images. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Drew the Dragon Slayer Thomas, coming to you both online and live from the Norman Rockwell Museum. The mission of the museum is to illuminate the power of American illustration art, to reflect and shape society and advance the enduring values of kindness, respect, and social equity that's portrayed in Norman Rockwell's art. I'll begin by reading the land acknowledgement. It is with gratitude and humility that we acknowledge that we're learning, speaking, and gathering on the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people, who are the indigenous peoples of this land on which the museum was built. Despite tremendous hardship in being forced from here, today their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Muncie community. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors past and present as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. So now I'd like to welcome you all to the 7th episode of our Tuesday program, Meet the Artist series, where we'll be in conversation with some of the most talented illustrators and painters of our generation, as well as you all, the audiences, both online and in person, who we encourage to be a part of the conversation as well. Today, we're thrilled to be with Bob Eggleton. Bob will speak about his life, starting with his inspirations in early work, and then he'll talk about covers and work he's done with other popular brands. After that, he'll speak about his recent works and finding your voice as an artist. And finally, he'll talk about his process. We're grouping questions by theme, so we invite you to ask relevant questions as he shares about each topic, and at the end, we'll open the floor for additional questions. So now I'd like to introduce Stephanie Haboush Plunkett, the Deputy Director and Chief Curator of the Norman Rockwell Museum.
Thank you so much, Drew. And thanks to our wonderful staff and interns for putting all of this together. But we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us. and we are so pleased to have Bob Eggleton with us tonight. As you may know, Bob Eggleton is one of the modern masters of fantasy and science fiction illustration. His drawings and paintings explore a wide range of science fiction, fantasy, and horror topics, depicting spaceships, alien worlds, and inhabitants, dragons, vampires, and other fantasy creatures, including Godzilla, which is a favorite of the artist, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that. The creator of many Magic the Gathering cards, Bob has illustrated and written numerous books on fantasy and science fiction, and between 1994 and 2004 won the prestigious Hugo Award for Best Professional Artist 8 times, an honor that he was nominated for an astounding 23 times. His art has been showcased in the 1995 book Alien Horizons, The Fantastic Art of Bob Eggleton, and in Greetings from the Earth, The Art of Bob Eggleton, which was published in 2000. Bob painted the cover for the Lovecraft-inspired Cthulhu 2000, a Lovecraftian anthology. And this was a collection of stories by 18 horror and science and fantasy authors. And we are actually thrilled to have a stunning image of this iconic creature or monster in our current exhibition, which is called Enchanted, The History of Fantasy Illustration. And that is a painting that Bob created especially for the Norman Rockwell Museum. So that's a real special pleasure. I'm happy to report that the Enchanted exhibition will be on view through October 31st here in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and it will then go on to travel to the Hunter Museum of American Art in Chattanooga, Tennessee, as well as the Flint Museum in Michigan. Bob, we are so thrilled to welcome you this evening, and we thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. It's awesome to be here. Fantastic.
So we are actually going to launch into your images.
Oh, cool.
I wonder if you might start out by telling us a little bit about what makes fantasy so appealing for you. What is it about this genre of art?
Fantasy and science fiction are great ways to tell a story, but in a kind of like a metaphorical way. You can get a point across about something, especially science fiction. You can get a point across about something. You don't have to keep, you don't have to shove it in someone's face. You can get this sort of, Star Trek was great at that. The original Star Trek, they got these great stories in the 60s. I grew up on that. My father said, you got to watch this show. And there's this guy in it named Mr. Spock, and you got to watch it. And there was this, everything was an analogy of everything was going on at the time in the 1960s. So it was a great way. All these things are great ways to tell. Lord of the Rings story is a great way. It's a great analogy for what goes on in good and evil in the world and things of that nature. And all of this and myths and legends are all in with all of that. And as people, I think we're inspired by myths and legends. We think that myths and legends are they give us kind of a history. They give us an oral history, like of things that we great analogous things, and where legends came from. Where were they real? Were the dragons real, or were they something else that was taken out of context?
Yes, and that love of the material really shows up in your work. So I think some of our first slides will kind of address some of your inspirations, which
oh boy,
I think people are going to be able to make the connection. Tell us about.
One of the things I do is I love classical art. I love classical fine art. And when I say fine art, I'm saying like these great epics by the Romantics and the Sublime works and all that. And I love illustration too. But this is one artist. His name is John Martin, and he was a sort of a kind of a cast out pastor or something, like, as I recall his history. And he went on to paint these epic, absolute apocalyptic scenes with, like, this one on the left is Pompeii exploding, and everything's it's just a cataclysm. And this painting has actually been restored. If you look in the center, there's a sort of a, you can't really see it, but there's a triangle, and the painting was found in 1928 in the Tate Museum in the basement, wrapped up. Think about it. You're a curator, Stephanie. Think of it. It's wrapped up like a
Wow.
carpet, sitting in water. And there was this big triangle ripped out of it. So it wasn't until the 1970s that they really discovered it. And it wasn't till the 2000s that they had the technology to computer map it and decide where all the lighting was coming from. And they had a restorative artist, they fixed it in and had a restorative artist paint in this entire center area based on a sketch that he had left behind, a much smaller version of it. And they left it as a restoration. So when you see the painting up close, it's huge. It's about 12 foot long, and it is absolutely huge. And the next one to it is the great day of his wrath. And this is God turning the earth inside out, because Martin loved religious paintings, but he did them in a context that was very, very interesting and parallel to the times of today. In the God's anger turns the thing, and the false popes and the money changers and everybody are all being cast into this giant pit. And you can see them all falling in. And when you get close up to the painting, and it's absolutely huge, maybe it's 20 feet across, you can see all these people just falling in, screaming, and entire cities and empires being just turned upside down and inside out. And it's just an absolutely epic piece. And when it was exhibited at the Tate Museum in 2012, they did a show where they actually had some laser animation on it. So the painting, suddenly you're looking at it, and then the lights go dark and the painting starts moving. It actually physically started moving, but it was done through this great animation and projection system they had. And it was lightning flashing and all kinds of stuff going on. And that exhibition, with the keynote speaker at the time when it opened, was Ray Harryhausen, because he was, of course, special effects master, and he's so inspired by this work that they asked him to be the keynote speaker, and that's what he did. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do something like that. I mean, and here we are, we're tying in science fiction, fantasy stuff to classical art.
And Bob, when did you first encounter this work, and how did it impact you?
Oh, I had gone back to the Hudson Valley River artists back in the 1970s when I had gone on field trips to museums. They took us to the MFA and things of that nature. And I saw an exhibit of Frederick Church's work, and I was like completely rapt by it. It was like, wow, this is just absolute epic. And later I was to find that Church painted from imagination. He made these temples and stuff you see, he made it up. You know what I mean? He just sort of made it up. And he would use what he knew about history to talk about, to make this up. So in a sense, it had kind of a fantastical thing to it. And he made anything. He would make like storm wave tossed boat look epic, you know? So,
They're amazing paintings.
this is Arnold Becklin. Now he's a Swiss surrealist, 1800s, and he did a painting. And what you're looking at on the left is a very, 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 very iconic and creepy painting called The Isle of the Dead. And Val Lewton made it into a movie back in the 1940s. Well, anyway, this has not only been homaged many times, and we're going to get to my homage a little later in the show here, but also what we have is he did 5 versions of it. So if you've seen this version, there's another version of it too. And the Met has one version, a museum in Germany has another version, and so on and so on. He also did a painting that is now, this is in the collection of the MFA in Boston. And one of these paintings I always wanted to see all my life. And I never thought about it. I came around the corner and there it was staring at me, and I nearly cried. And it is basically Odysseus encountering the Cyclops on the island. So this is right out of Ray Harryhausen. And there's the Cyclops, and you can't see it there, but if you get up close, you see he's got like one eye. And he's throwing rocks in, and the way that ocean, the water is done, it's all done so beautifully well. And it's just a stunning painting. And it's now in hiding. They took it away to, how you guys in the museum, you know what it's like. They put away the painting for a little while. So I haven't seen it up, but boy, did I drink that thing in every time I visited it. So and Arnold Becklin, he's done a book of work, and his stuff, it would be called fantasy art, but at the time it was called sublime, it was called romantic, and so on and so on. Yeah. So next. This is 2 painters I love, and they painted the ocean and grand landscapes so well, especially, this is Russian painter Ivan Aibazovsky on the left. He made A Storm at Sea into something like right out of the, the end of the earth, you know what I mean? And this is just like, his work is so luminescent, and most of the paintings are in St. Petersburg, and I've never actually seen one in person, but I know people that have, and they're saying they're even more epic in person. And he was considered to be Russia's Turner because of his glow that he put in work. And speaking of Turner, right next to him is Turner. This is Storm in the Alps. And Turner, his lighting effects, and when you get up close to his work, and I've gotten so close that museum docents they get nervous. You know what I mean? You're getting right up close to it, and I'm looking at it from downward, and I'm looking up because I want to see what the texture looks like. And Turner had things like he dug his fingernails into the canvases and things of this nature, and he just would layer and layer and layer paint, and then it would just varnish it and varnish it and varnish it until it became this great luminescent glow to it. And his work is my great influence in terms of light in my work and things of that nature. Next. Here we go. This is an early work. This is me in the 1980s. I had a kind of a really great ascension into this work. I started in 1983, and I realized this is what I'm going to do. In 1978, I met an artist named Eric Ladd, and he did book covers. And he saw my early scratchings and drawings that I did. And he goes, look, you got a lot of talent. You got to start showing your stuff at science fiction conventions, which I did. And out of that, I got my first book covers. And out of that, I got to know the people from Dawning Publishing. And I said, H.G. Wells' First Man in the Moon is sort of in the public domain. I would love to illustrate that book. And well, we got the book. We got the unedited version of it, which is not on generally in print. This is the unedited version, the unabridged. That's it. So I got to do a lot of paintings for that. And what you're seeing at top here is the top one is the mooncalf pastures. These are these great mooncalves that were and they're great slug-like creatures, and they dwarf our two astronauts who go from England. They invent an anti-gravity paste and put it on a big like a dome, a metal dome spaceship, and they end up going to the moon, and they find a dying race called the Selenites, and these are the guys in the middle, and they are in classes. So you have the worker and drone class, which is H.G. Wells is really getting his political axe ground here too. And these are the brain guys. These are the brain bugs. These are the ones that read minds. They don't even speak. They just read their minds, and their heads are covered with these skin hoods because their brains are heating up, and it's keeping them insulated. And this is Mr. Cable, and he's being cornered in a blue room. It's just described as a blue circular room, and they're sort of wanting to talk to him, but they're talking to him telepathically. This is the descent into the moon. They find this giant vent that goes down into the moon, and it's a circular thing that goes all the way down. So all of this provided me a chance to do this is astronomical art, which I really love. And I got to do some creepy things and some textured aliens and stuff like that. And this is a significant amount of use of airbrushing. And I'm going to make note of that because you'll see a change as I go on. The airbrushing was really evolved in this, when everybody was doing airbrushing in the 80s, like get an airbrush, like that. And I said, well, okay. So I did, and I got into it, and we did this. So, and the book came out, and I wound up doing a lot of better job buying the remaindered copies and getting those out on the internet and selling them out earlier at conventions and stuff like that than the publisher ever did to getting the book out. So next.
Bob, I wonder something. I wonder if you could just tell us, I know you had a very supportive family.
Yes.
Who kind of encouraged your creativity, and did you also have art training? Can you say a little bit about that?
What happened was my mother and father were noticeably concerned about, what are you going to do for a living, like that. And I did this thing, and I had a lot of relatives and other people, friends around them saying, he really needs to do this artwork. He really needs to do the art. All right. And they encouraged it, and they took me for lessons. My mother took me for art lessons. I mean, in elementary school, I was going to art lessons. And then when I went to Rhode Island College, this was in 1979, I worked with a teacher, one of my mentors, his name is Enrico Crinardi, And he is one of my, he passed away this year, sadly, from COVID. But he was an amazing man, and his work's in the Pucker Gallery in Boston. If you ever you just Google it and you'll see it. And he's a great guy. And he and I, we're stylistically two different people, but he so encouraged me, and he's such a character. And he was always saying, kid, what are you gonna do? Kid, that's him. He was like that, very hard Boston accent, but he introduced me to the work of H.R. Giger, who of course designed Alien, and that was in 1979 when that movie came out. And so that had a profound effect on my life. And I said, this is the stuff I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And I went around college for a couple of years, and I realized that at the end of it, they were in this sort of this postmodern kind of thing. We were saying it's like post-Watergate, post-Vietnam, that sort of thing. And everything was this, one particular teacher was all into this conceptual work where you don't do anything realistic. And they didn't like Frank Frazetta. They didn't like Norman Rockwell. They didn't like anything that was realistic, because to them it was all, and Henry Pinardi wasn't like that. He kind of liked it all. He thought that, it's all fair and all good. But some of the newer people there. So I ended up leaving there, and I got a job at an art supply store where I got full benefits and all kinds of pay. And I got discounts on art supplies, and they would give me stuff to try out. Hey, so it was great. I was going home with free art supplies, from this art place, and I would do pictures, and I would work on things, and I would start small, and I worked for small presses and little papers and little newspapers, and I did little cartoons for them. And it wasn't very much here or there, but then I went to a couple of these science fiction conventions, BosCon being one, in Boston. And there at the time, it was very easy to meet publishers and people that work in publishing, and you could show your work off in these conventions, and they'd come along and look at your work on these panel displays. And one publisher, Jim Bain, came along, and he said to me, hey, he said, I want you to do book covers for me. So I said, okay, great. So I came down to New York, I met with him, and he sent me back, and I sold doing book covers, and one thing led to another. And the piece on the left here is for a book called Roger Zelazny's Alien Speedway. And it's sort of a concept book, and it was done by a packager, sorry. And it was the first artist that worked on it. I guess he just fell on the sword. He didn't do what they wanted. And it was literally, I was right place, right time. They turned to me and they go, Bob, can you do, and I'm, at the time I'm 26 years old, and I'm going, yeah. And that's what I did. And I got it done on time, and they loved it. And the next one is for a book called Necroscope by Tor Books. Brian Lumley wrote this book in England in the 1980s, and it didn't take off big time. And then Tor Books bought it, and they said, can you do this skull idea? We want this skull thing. And they said, and I said, fine, great, super, wonderful, like that. And I did this, and it sold millions of copies. It went on to sell all these millions. Now it's being made into a movie. And now the artwork is being seen all over the place on the net, saying 80s horror novel being made into major motion picture, like that. So we'll see what's going on there, and it's this nice, no, but this is the skull that launched 1,000 screens. And these again, they're very airbrushy. And that was the thing at the time, and we can, move along. Next one.
Bob, if you don't mind, there were a couple relevant questions to what
Sure.
we were showing on the last slide.
What
And I know you even touched on this first question a little bit, so you can decide if you want to talk about it more or not. But
Sure.
They asked, what made you decide to become a professional artist?
What made me decide? I couldn't do much else. No, I just had decided this was my nature. This was what I was born to do. And I decided that, I'd seen a lot of people in really, dead end jobs where they kind of like get to the end of it and they retire, and that's the end of it, and they be bored and, whatever. And they look back and they think, what did they ever do with their life and all that kind of stuff. And me, I decided I was going to take this big risk. And originally, this is the funny part, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And that came to pass later on in my life. But I wanted to be a comic book artist because I was inspired by the comics of the 60s and 70s, Marvel Comics and all that. And I wanted to do comic illustration books. comic illustration things. And then I found out, well, it's really, it can be a little bit tedious and all that kind of stuff. But then it was then when I started going to these science fiction conventions, I started seeing these paintings, and I'm going like, I'm going to try painting. And that's what I did. I started getting into the painted art, and there was only one way forward for me, and that was the way.
Thank you. Perfect. And I also wanted to ask before we get too far away from it, somebody asked, why did you pick H.G. Wells as your first major project?
Well, I liked War of the Worlds, and also H.G. Wells, Ray Harryhausen made a movie of First Men on the Moon in 1963, and he did his own version of the Selenites and the whole thing like that. And I thought to myself, it's an influential kind of movie to me, and Ray Harryhausen is very influential to me. And I thought, well, let me do my own take on it. And then we were looking, and it was kind of one of these things. It was a classical book written by this author, and in the United States anyway, it was a public domain, meaning we literally just took the book and we were able to use it from a source that we got it from. And it's not the case in the UK. I guess it's very copyrighted, but in America, it's a public domain book. So I was able to kind of have sort of my own editorial input into it. And now the coda to all this is if everything goes well in the next few years, it might get republished again with all new artwork. So we'll see.
Thank you. We can go ahead and continue.
All right. This is let me start on the right. This is my first art book called Alien Horizons, and the publisher is called Paper Tiger, and they had done a lot of books with Roger Dean and Jim Burns. He's a great artist. These are great artists I admired. And I later became friends with both Roger Dean and Jim Burns, which is really kind of nice. And anyway, they'd done these books, and they had this publishing program going on in England. And I was at one of the book expos in New York City, and I met the Dutch publisher of it, Hubert Schafsma, and I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Bob Eggleton." He goes, "Oh no, Bob, how are you?" Like that. It's like, hey, I'd like to, let's. I said, "Would you consider like doing my art book?" And he said, "Yeah, sure," like that. So he gave me a business card. This is how easy it was. And I called him up, wrote him a letter, called him up, and they said they sent me a contract, and we got the thing together. I flew to England to do some interviews with Nigel Suckling, who is the author of it. And at the same time, I did some more business with some other publishers. This is in 1994. 1994 or 5, 1994 or 5. And it was this is pre-internet. And I did all of this without the internet. It was pretty amazing. And anyway, so this is the book that was a result, and it sold a lot of copies, and it got me a Hugo nomination for Best Related Book. And the best royalty I got out of it was I met my wife because she bought the book in Australia, and she's paging through it. She's reading a little bit about me, and she goes, "This sounds a lot like me." She found my address. She wrote me. We started writing back and forth, and then 1997 rolls along, and I saying, I really need a vacation, so I should go to Hawaii. And being a Rhode Islander, I'm going like, well, Australia is kind of in that direction, so why don't I go there too? So I called her up and I said, "How would you like to visit?" And I had all these frequent flyer miles. So I said, "Let's go to Australia." So we did. And at the end of it, I knew I was going to marry her. So that was how that all evolved, she's my greatest royalty I got from the book. The book on the book on the very left side is called The Book of Sea Monsters. Now, at this point, Paper Tiger had been bought by another publisher called Collins and Brown. And there was a lot of improprieties going on with the original publisher of Paper Tiger. So they bought this book, and this is a lot better deal. And I said to them, I'd love to do a book about sea monsters. And, I think it's a great idea. And they said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so Nigel again wrote and researched some of the references on it. And I always wanted to do sea lore, and I've always been attracted to oceans and sea lore and things of that nature. So this is the result. And again, the book went on. It sold 50,000 copies or something like that. It did really well. And it stayed in publication. I think the longest thing I'd ever had. It was published from 1998 through 2013. It stayed in print. Wow. And so that was pretty good.
How many paintings are actually in that book, and how long did that project take you?
Something like 50 paintings are in it. Wow. But I was younger, and I did a lot of drawings. I did a lot of watercolors for it, so they were a lot quicker. But I was also 38 years old, and I had a lot more energy. And so I did those paintings sometimes 2 and 3 a day, which was fun to do. And I got it done and they liked it. And anyway, so here's the middle image is from the John W. Campbell book. It's called Frozen Hell. What is that? That's the original book. That was a full-length novel of what turned into Who Goes There, which what turned into The Thing, which is made into 3 movies and now going to be a 4th one. But they made one in 1951 with James Arness and The Thing. Then John Carpenter made the one that everybody seems to really like a lot. And then, of course, they made another they claim they made a remake of it in 2011, but it was actually a prequel rather than a remake, and that one didn't do as fair as well. But it's The Thing is just such popular in our popular culture, and again, it's a shape-changing monster that they discover beneath the ice in Antarctica. And so, yeah, all right, Magic the Gathering. A lot of people out there I know are big Magic fans, and I know this because I get emails from everybody almost every day about my Magic cards. In 1997, I was asked by Wizards of the Coast to do some Magic cards, and these were so easy to do because the phone would ring and Maria Cabardo would be on the phone and she'd say, "Hi, Bob, like I got a card for you to do. Could you like a tornado, like destroying a mountain? That seems up your alley." I said, "Yeah, okay, fine." And I'm literally on the phone to her sketching as I'm doing this. And she goes, "Here's the trick." And this is like on a Tuesday. She'd say, "Can I have the finish by Friday?" And I'm like, "No problem," like that, you know? So anyway, so here we go. Years and years later, I'm getting these cards in the mail. I'm getting questions about them. I'm getting people asking me to repaint them because Magic, if you've seen the market on some of the art in these cards, it's absolutely amazing where it took off. And I sold my original artwork a long time ago. I didn't even like to think about it, but anyway, so I did these cards. So I've got 22 of them out there, and I get fan mail and fan letters on it every single day, it seems, which is sort of the gift that keeps on giving. And I've done some art. I've signed backs of these so-called proofs and done sketches on them, and people pay me, you know, pretty good money to do that. And so it's just been a great thing. So, and it's fun to be part of that.
Well, how large were these paintings originally?
This painting, that's the funny part. The new paintings that people are doing, the new artists, and they do it with Tyler Jacobson. He's a marvelous artist. Donato Giancola, he's a marvelous artist. They're doing these things like, you know, 18 by 24, 20 by 24, 20 by 36, you know, big paintings. And these paintings had to be big enough, about 6 by 7 inches, to fit into a FedEx envelope. And so I finished them up, I'd work on them, get them all done, finish them up, put them in the FedEx envelope, run down to FedEx, get them off. Maria would have them the next day, and she'd approve them immediately, and I get paid in the next week. And boy, it was just a great time. It was just an incredible time. And they would it was a matter of just getting them done. And Wizards, they had a staff of like 6 or 7 people, and now it's this big company, you know. So yeah.
There's a question from the online audience about your covers. They ask, currently there seems to be a lot of photographic style cover illustrations on fantasy book covers. Do you think fashions come and go with book cover art?
Yeah, and also I think here's what's happened to that. I got a good answer on that one, and I got it from another artist too. But what happened is we have movies like Avatar. We have movies, all these Marvel Comics universe movies. The special effects are digitally done, and they're so good. They're so tight. You can see like the tear ducts in the eyes, and you can see the pores of the skin. I don't have to say anybody, go look at Avatar. And what has happened is in the last 20 years or so, is that the audiences have become like, they want to see more. I suppose people are looking for more photoreal, where it's like they want to see like every hair in the mustache or every hair, and there's a lot less impressionistic work. If you look back in the 60s, there were marvelous artists, not just Frank Frazetta, but there was John Schoenherr and Kelly Freas. And Kelly is another one. He's a mentor. He's like my science fiction father. And in fact, I'm writing the text for a book on his work currently too. These guys did very impressionistic work. Jack Dawn was another one. Go just source them up on Google, and you'll see John Schoenherr did all the Dune paintings. Now Dune's going to be this giant movie coming out later this year, but he did the original paintings of these, and they're totally impressionistic and, very what you call wishy-washy and brishy-brushy and whatever. And for me, there's more imagination in that than there is seeing everything that's totally lit up photographically, where you're getting detail that when it gets shot down to book cover size or magic card size, you're not even going to see that. So, you know, to me, it's all about, you know, getting the message across is what it is. Even you look at Norman Rockwell's work, and he did, you know, it looks photographic. When you get close to it, it's actually very impressionistic in places too.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. I got the pleasure of a publisher contacted me, and I've worked with them before, and they said, hey, we've got the rights to do King Kong, the original novel of King Kong. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you want to do it, Bob? It was like, it took me about like 10 seconds to answer that. You know what I mean? And it was absolutely yes. Thank you very much. That would be wonderful. And the catch was you can't use the movie type Kong, any of the movie Kongs, because they're trademarked. But the book is sort of, they have the rights on the original novelization by Delos Lovelace. And so I get to do, which is a bit different. It is actually a bit different than the book. And so I had to come up with what will be my own Kong. And this is like, I gave him that kind of that look with a swept back head. And he's kind of a gorilla, but he's also something else. He's an ape, but he's something else too. And not just a silverback gorilla, he's something else. And he's got that swept back head. That seems to be a real trademark with all the Kongs that have ever been on screen anyway. So I'm borrowing a little bit from here and there, but I'm making up my own entity. And this is what he's going to look like. And this is how I rough out my ideas. The one on the right is a marker sketch done about the size you're looking at, about that big. And it's beautiful. It's just me working with markers, and I put white out into it, and I get my idea across really big, and then I blow it up big to see how it's going to look on a big 30 by 40 canvas or something like that. And next we can see the other ones. All right, more doodles out of my doodle book for Kong. I get to show the spider pit. So this is like they're walking across the log. You can see up the top there, and maybe there's the indication of Kong coming through the jungle to them, and it's the crew walking across. But beneath them, they're watching these tentacles and these spider appendages sort of reaching up toward them, and that's actually mentioned in the book. And it was completely cut out of the film, but it was mentioned in the book. So I am taking full advantage of that. And the next one is Kong versus the T-Rex, or the meat eater, as they call them. And instead of going completely bonkers saying, oh, you know, I want to do, totally accurate dinosaur, I'm going to go much more for a little bit of the movie dinosaurs, the ones with the tails on the ground, along with the real thing. And I had a great discussion with Ray Harryhausen about the tails on the ground dinosaurs versus the ones that work. They said they have now. And he looked at me and Ray's like this, and he's like, I think they just completely, it was a total disservice when they discovered that the dinosaurs had their tails up. And I said, yeah, I'm with you, Ray. And I said, there's just nothing like Guanji, I said, you showed us how dinosaurs walked, like that. And he's totally in agreement with that. And he was a major influence in my life, Ray Harryhausen was. And I got to meet him.
He was a master of the stop motion animation, wasn't he?
Yes, he did stop motion animation for a number of movies from Mighty Joe Young on, and he had gone to see Willis O'Brien after he made King Kong, and he came back to help Willis O'Brien work on Mighty Joe Young, and then he worked on his own movies, the Sinbad movies, and then he worked on all kinds of other Beasts from the 20,000 Fathoms, which became the inspiration for Godzilla. And then Ray was just, I had to introduce him at a breakfast seminar at a convention I was at, and they said, you gotta introduce Ray Harryhausen. Okay. I get up there and I go, I'd like to just say, welcome to the, I completely was so starstruck, I forgot his name. It was a great thing, but he was terrific to talk to. And then on the other one, this is a dinosaur coming out of the jungle, and our party who are looking for Andaro come across it looks from something from the prehistoric age. That's actual dialogue. So move along, please. Next
I'm wondering, as you're reading this amazing literature, are you taking notes? You must be.
Yeah, I do. I
take
take
it
notes
with an eye for imagery.
Yeah, I take
with
notes.
An ear for imagery.
that'll make a great piece. That'll make a great piece, you know, that sort of thing. And then I kind of visually edit it from then on in. In 2000, I was called by a director out of the blue to work on a movie called Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. And it caused it's a $1 billion franchise now. And the director was John Davis. He created this character and he loved my artwork and he loved my kaiju and Godzilla work. And we'll get to the Godzilla work, I promise. And he basically said, you know, I'd like to hire you to do concept art. So this is the concept pieces I did, and these are done in pencil. And I had to knock out 4 and 5 of these a day because that's Hollywood. And it was for a modestly budgeted movie. And this is Poltra, the giant kaiju that he's on the left, and it's a giant chicken monster. And we wanted it sort of kind of based on a really cheesy old movie called The X from Outer Space. If you're familiar with that one, it's this big chicken monster thing. The other one is a 3-eyed Yokian rat. And the nice part about designing Poltra was Patrick Stewart played the king of this race of these creatures. And he had to enter, he goes, I bring forth Poltra, like that, you know? So I got to see like Patrick Stewart introduce my monster, which was kind of fun. That was just really fun. And it was a great film, and it led to other film experiences. I worked on the movie Sphere, I worked on Star Trek, and I worked on another movie called The Ant Bully, which we did a lot more work on, but it just didn't do as well as that. And now I may be getting back into movies again, so.
Bob, speaking of all the movies you worked on, someone from our audience asked, what is your favorite movie monster and why?
Oh, that's easy. Godzilla.
Yeah.
Why? Because Godzilla is epic myth. He's no matter how you portray him, in the original Japanese incarnation, he personified the atomic bomb. Is the only country on Earth to ever have an atomic bomb exploded on their soil as a weapon. And what happened is they created this Tomoyuki Tanaka, who was the head of Toho Studios at the time, saw it was flying over the ocean, and he imagined what it would look like if a creature came out of the ocean and started attacking Japan. And what had happened was he had seen The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which had played really well in Japan in 1953. So in 1954, he got together with director Ishiro Honda, and he got to with Ichi Tsuburaya, the special effects director, who was a big fan of Ray Harryhausen's. Sadly, it's not mutual. And he did things a little differently because they didn't have the money to do stop motion or the time to do stop motion. So they did this what's called men in suit technique, along with puppets, some puppet work. And that's how they created Godzilla. And Haruo Nakajima played Godzilla in the first incarnation of him. And he was a guy that had to wear a 200-pound rubber suit. and the movie was a huge hit in Japan. It it was imported to America, where it was watered down a little bit and changed over. And they put Raymond Burr in scenes going like, it's big and it's terrible, you know, and he did. And even though Raymond Burr did a great job with kind of bringing it to American audiences, and it deserved a sequel, and then everything took off, and then there was King Kong versus Godzilla, and there was all these sequels like Godzilla versus Monster Zero, and you had Godzilla versus the Smog Monster by 1971, and Godzilla continues to this day. And this is a movie I was in. I was a running extra. As the course would be, I got to know the people that made Godzilla movies, and this was a movie called Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla, filmed in 2002 in a blazing, drenching heat. I mean, if you think it's hot here, think it's Japan way hotter. And we're at the Hakajima Water Park, which is it's down sort of near Yokohama, and we're on this blazingly hot asphalt, and we had to run. And you see me this is me in if you see the red circle, that's me running. That's the one clip of me that made it into the film of me running. And that's a 10-hour shooting. There's like me, there's one thing, and the camera moves up and out of sight. In the bottom picture, that's what I was wearing. I had to wear a jacket and long pants in 110-degree heat. And I'm with Shogo Tomiyama, and that's he's he was at the time the president of Toho Pictures. And so I had done a lot of merchandising for Godzilla in the 1990s and all that. And he came up to me and he said, thank you so much for everything you do for Godzilla. And so at Toho, I was kind of a guest, and I got to see the special effects filming of the same movie, Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. And outside Toho Studios, in the middle studio, they've got a faux bronze effigy of Godzilla, a full statue of him, and he's sort of like got his tail ripping through this cement block. And that's right outside there. And in back of that is a big, huge mural of the Seven Samurai. Very impressive. And next to that is me and Shinichi Wakasa. He's like my brother. He's a wonderful, wonderful design artist, and he does all the monsters in Japan. He makes the monsters in Japan. He designed Godzilla 2000, and that's me with the 2000 Godzilla. The fiberglass suit as they used for the water work, and that was it was a grand time. Go on.
The online audience wants to know what you think on the newer takes of Godzilla, for example.
Absolutely love them. The Legendary series was phenomenal. I really like Shin Godzilla. It was a little bit slow. I like Godzilla Singular Point, which is on Netflix, but the Legendary Godzilla was just literally Kong Skull Island. All that was one of my favorite movie series ever. I mean, and this last Godzilla versus Kong was just beautiful. It just, I rented a theater, paid $200 to rent a theater for 15 of my friends to see it. And we all saw it together, and it was just nice to see it big up there on the screen. And of course I saw it on demand, and I have the DVD and all that kind of stuff. And I loved it because it tells us, it gives us something bigger than ourselves. It's like, these are the Titans. These are these great monsters that were here way before us. And you know, and they're the gods, as it were. And it ties basically into what I was talking about before about legendary stuff and epic myth and all that. And I just absolutely loved the iteration of how they've taken Kong from 1933, and they've now, here he is in 2021, still roaring, and he's 310 feet high, and you know, he's amazing. He's an amazing Kong, and it's something in all of us that are giant monsters, and we all feel a little out of place in our lives sometimes, and that's what giant monsters are, trapped in a world they never made. This is a cover I did for IDW's Godzilla comics in the mid-2010s because they got the license to do it. And I did this really great, really fun cover. And it was like the atomic bomb going off in the background. And this one has been sort of used. And now it's what do you call it? It's one of those electronic, you know, things that you can get online. And now it's, you know, it's all over. And I did a number of comics for IDW. I wound up doing an entire painted comic book called Godzilla in Hell. It's #2, and it was the best-selling Godzilla comic book in the whole line of Godzilla comics. Wow. It went into 3 printings, and it was all painted. I did the entire 21 pages completely painted. And at the end of it, I got a page to be able to introduce Gustave Doré and John Martin and Joseph Millard Turner as influences in what I was doing, because in the movie, in the story, Godzilla was sent to hell, and hell is this complete thing of ice and fire and ice and fire. And Godzilla's got to work his way out of it. And King Ghidorah comes up being the demon. And it really worked out well, and they published it, and everybody grokked and they bought it, stuff like that. So, and this is the cover I did to one of the iterations of it. I did so many covers, but this is a very typical cover I did for IDW.
It's such a beautiful piece, and I'll just mention, and I know you mentioned this yourself, that here at the Rockwell Museum you are on the same wall as Gustave Doré.
Yeah, exactly. I came into the museum, and God Almighty, Jesse Kowalski and all you guys that did all this marvelous organizing of this show is just phenomenal, because I came in and there's my work. And I'm going, that's Gustave Doré, like that. I'm sitting in my life, you know, like that. And it was just, you know, and I'm going like, I'm on the same walls, and I'm in the same book, because I know some of the things in the book were not in the show exactly, but there's a Turner in the book, and I'm going, I'm in the same pages as Turner. Wow. Ooh. You know, I had this moment. I had to kind of, you know, it was kind of a moment, you know. Yeah, so, you know, and speaking of Godzilla, famous monsters cover on the left, Godzilla versus Gamera. That's the fantasy battle everybody's wanted to see, and they can't do it because it's 2 different Japanese companies. One is run by Daiei Gamera, and the other one's Toho. And Gadai would love to do it. Toho people don't want to do it. So that's the word on that. The next one next to that is a 1960s idea for a magazine called Weird Fiction Review. And it's Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. And if you look down below where the ocean is, there you can see all my influence of ocean painters that I like Abazovsky and people like that. So I try to like think of like what it'd be like to insert Godzilla into like a Turner-esque painting, you know, this sort of thing, and see where we go from there. You know, I mean, it's all of this stuff is just so the stuff of it's all sauce for the goose.
And Bob, speaking of these amazing Godzillas, it is my understanding that you have a huge Godzilla toy collection.
Yeah, I do. One is here. I have spent more money than I will even talk about on imported Japanese toys because they make these beautiful models of him and I mean toys that are now, and I'm finding out now they're worth a fortune. I've got some of the old 60s Bullmark toys which were made for children back then when Godzilla first came out. And hold on. And when Godzilla first came out, and there was these toys, the kids threw them away, so they made them collector's items. So over the years, I've collected them, and I have very little house room for these kind of things now. I mean, it's just astonishing, and it's kind of something wow, yeah. It's my vice. Other people have vices. They have food or whatever. Mine's maybe Godzilla toys. And
I've got one from like 20 years ago. Are you saying I could make some money off that?
Some of them are worth it. Some of them are absolutely worth a fortune in the resale type of thing. So, but I don't think about it in resale. I just think about it because they kind of bring joy to my. All right, this is some recent work of mine that I'm really very proud of. And you see a difference between my early work and my recent work. This I did in 2019. I had eye surgery, as I told you about, Stephanie, and I had to have one eye sort of covered up a little bit. So this one, and it's called The Shadows in the Stone by Jack Dan. And it was for an Australian publisher. And I homaged Arnold Becklin. You can see the Isle of the Dead I put in there, and that's my homage. And then these blimps are powered by human souls. And so I did this painting largely with this eye. And I met the deadline, got it done, and I discovered new things about myself when I was painting it. And I new techniques, and I used some very, very phosphorus, very luminous techniques, and a lot of what's called painting with a palette knife, where you get like these accidental things start to happen, and you see the cliffs on the side. That's like that. The next to that is The Serpent of the Golden Sea. And that was done for a gallery show, and it's a small work. It's only 12 by 16 inches, but it was a big hit. And I love the kind of again, look at that and look at my influence of Turner. I'm dialing that Turner thing going on in there, and I'm creating this epic, this myth of giant monsters at the edge of the earth that the sailors believed all existed on the edge of the flat earth. And all that stuff is all lore, and it fascinates me. No, it just fascinates me how it, the St. George and the Dragon story. Very quickly, I'll say this before we go on. St. George and the Dragon emanated from a story of this is possibly what happened. A saltwater crocodile had made his way to England, very large, 25, 30 feet, and that's not impossible to happen. And he made it in there in medieval times and made his way to a seaside or riverside village and was stealing the livestock. This crocodile was just coming out and eating the livestock. And they hired this one guy to go get rid of this giant crocodile. So now the whole legend of St. George and the Dragon is born. That's what they believe it was, because outside the village, it was like a 6 foot long skull of this thing was hanging for the longest time. So if you dig around on the internet, you find that that's pretty much what, and a lot of historians think that's where we got St. George and the Dragon from. That's how a legend becomes like, it becomes like a religion after a while. It's like, Life of Brian, we must follow his shoe, they one deed, a pest control thing where we're getting rid of a crocodile, becomes this epic story of a man fighting a dragon. So, and I'm always about that. I'm so about that. I love these stories where legends come from and stuff like that. And that ties into Godzilla. It ties into, all of that because, it's just such, in the new Godzilla movies where you see the cave drawings of what the monsters looked like and back in the days and how they were imagined. And it's just, this epic legend thing going on. And that to me is just like, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So
yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to learn about the roots of these epic legends, as you say. What do you think? Why are they important to people? I mean, why do you feel that delving into a sense of fantasy is so meaningful for people? I mean, we notice in the museum here, people are riveted by these artworks, and there's something special going on.
It touches something deep in our soul. I really believe this. It touches something that's in our genes. It's in our makeup, or in our mindset, in our we're sort of born with it. It's sort of this belief that there's something bigger, something greater. And I'm not exactly the most religious guy in the world, but I will say I'm spiritual, and I will say there's something bigger going on in the big picture, and that's part of all that. And I think that's what we're touching into, Stephanie. I think we're touching into where people, it's just something bigger. It's just this great, these great epic stories, and these are stories told that are they're epics along the lines of great heroes and the Greek heroes and the same sort of thing. I mean, Odysseus, that was the whole thing. He goes, the guy is sailing a ship between two monsters, Scylla and Charybdis. You know what I mean? It's all part of what it's part of our makeup, and we sort of believe that, and it's why we respond to it. And also, in the sense of some things, you get things like people like Frankenstein and the Wolfman and things like that, because these are all monsters, and they're largely trapped. They're trapped in a world they don't understand, they don't comprehend it. The Creature from the Black Lagoon is another example of that. The creature trapped in a world he never made, falls in love with a woman in his lagoon, and what's he going to make of it? What's he going to do? What can he say? He can't do much, but he's just, it's a primal thing. And that's what it is. I think that's what it is. It calls back to something in all of us that we look back on and we think, wow, this is part of our makeup. This is part of what we are. It's mythology, and everybody loves a good story, and these are great stories, and everybody loves a great story being told. And whether it's, Tolkien will tell it, Lord of the Rings, look how successful that is, and it's just such a, and it's a parable for what's going on in our world. We live in a world that's confusing and strange, and now wouldn't you love to have a dragon just lift you up and take you someplace else?
Most definitely, and I think that's beautifully said.
That's what I think it is. People are, they see these giant, and look at kids. They love dinosaurs, like that. I was in a Barnes and Noble, and some woman said out loud, she's got her kid, the 4-year-old, with her, and she goes, well, he's in the dinosaur phase now. I sat there and I said, at the time, 56 years old, and I'm still in the dinosaur phase. Okay. And
we can look right behind you on your wall, and we can see that that's true. I love that.
Yeah, I know. It's my to quote, Jurassic Park, we've got a T-Rex, and that's what I for me, that's he's just, it just reminds me, and we all came from that, wherein the dinosaurs are living today. They're birds. They're around today. They're just little birds you see every single day.
There were a couple more good questions I wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
You were talking about all these amazing movies, and in the beginning you were talking about how movies like Lord of the Rings, how they represent the things that are good and bad about reality. The question was, how do you represent these ideas of good and bad in your artwork?
I try to be subtle. I give it to the audience, because I want the audience to use their brain too. I don't want to spell everything out for the marketing people like that. They want everything spelled out, you know. But I like to insert things that are a little subtle, a little bit makes you think. And some people will say, is that you're meaning to say this? And I'm going, no, but it shows you're thinking, you know. And it's like, if two people can look at a painting I did and come away with all different ideas from it, and they not only, it's not so much telling them a story, but they can make up a story around it. That's even better. That's when you really win. That's when you win, is when you can make up a story around it. And it may not have been my intent to do that, but if it affects you in an emotional way like that, and there's definitely, you know, there's definitely some things going on in this world where we are, you know, it's you know, it's crazy, and that's going to come forth in my art. It's going to come forth in my art, even no matter how, whether I'm intending to do it or not, it's going to come forth.
You know, I was just reminded by my colleague, Rich Bradway, who's behind the scenes, that this fascination with fantasy and other worlds and characters is really in the heart and art of Jarvis Rockwell, who is actually Norman Rockwell's oldest son, turning 90.
Wow.
And his toy collection, Bob, you must visit it sometime. It's,
oh my God, yeah.
It's a collection that I think rivals anywhere. But many of his toys actually make their way into his art.
Those even more. My wife would love that even more, because she loves the really old tin toys and this sort of thing. And we've got our share of all that too, and our share of books and our share. You know, I mean, it's just, we're just pack rats, and it's kind of scary. It's a little scary. And some people could do documentaries on the Discovery Channel on me. If you know,
I hope we see one day. That would be great.
It's like, oh, you know, it's like, how many Godzillas do you have in that closet? It's like, okay, well, because I have them in the closet. And you know, it's just something that's just part of me. I mean, I know people that are Spartan and they can't stand anything on the floor. They can't stand anything in this. And, you know, I can reach over and go like, oh, I've got a T-Rex. You know, and you know, and it's just something that you can, you know, it's part of what I am. You know, I'm like sort of a magnet to that kind of stuff. So
Rich wanted to add that Jarvis's toys are also displayed at Mass Mocha.
Oh, wow.
Are indeed.
Great.
Yes.
That's great. That's terrific. Fantastic.
I think maybe a good question to end it on, if you don't mind, would be where do you see your career going next?
Oh boy. I asked that self. I'm going to be 61 coming up soon. And where did it all go? I don't know where it all went. And my career, it's going back to movies and it might be going back to movies for a little bit, but I'm also wanting to do more personal work. I want to do some really good personal pieces, because that, and a lot of artists are talking about this, because, you know, you start thinking the days are getting shorter rather than longer in front of you, and say, you know, not so many, you have more in back of you than in front of you. So now you want to start thinking about, let's make the art count. When I was younger, I was like, I do advertising work, and I worked with some absolute, some of the really trickiest stuff you could imagine. Yeah, I got paid. It was money, but hey, it was 23, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm going to do. But now I want to do something that's much more, I know what my power is. I know what I have the power to do, and I want to make that happen and create these, you know, some really, like the Cthulhu painting I did for the museum. Originally, we were going to use something else. A little story behind that. And I told Jesse at the time, I said, you know, because there was a lot of stuff going on at the time, and I said, I was having cataract surgery, actually, what I was having going on, and so they come along and they said. And I said, I can give you this one, but if you can wait a couple of weeks, I got this one. And I showed him a sketch, and he gave me that couple of weeks to do that. And so I did that. And here I am, just having recovered from that. And I managed to do this painting. And it's a personal work. It's very personal. And in the sense that it's what I wanted to do without any art direction or without any typography on it or any of that kind of stuff. And so if I was going to be in such an epic show like this, I wanted to do something that was really special for the show, and that was very important for me to do that. So,
and Bob, it's a phenomenal piece. It literally jumps off the wall. But can I ask you, just in terms of this discussion, what do you what makes a great painting, and how do
What
you
makes a
approach
great-
making
what
a great
makes-
painting?
What makes a great painting? What makes a great painting is when you put love into it, and when it shows love, and you know, and you've gone the fullest you can go on it. And no painting is ever, I think as Picasso said this, no painting is ever finished, it's just abandoned. And because artists, we can work art. Come on, guys, younger artists out there, we can work our, if you think you're going to go back and make it perfect, stop. When you get my age, don't worry about it. Nothing's perfect. As William Shatner said at 90 years old, he said in a recent interview, he said, don't worry about this small stuff, because in the end, it doesn't matter. And it is. Art is a continuing quest to create the better picture. And you say to me, what's your best picture? My next one, probably. Although the Cthulhu one is a pretty good, that's a pretty good recent, like, best picture. But it's always like, I've got sketches and sketches and sketches. And my wife in tech today, she just said to me, she goes, sweetheart, she goes, you've really got to sit down and just start going on some of this stuff. And I'm going like, okay, great. I'll let you know when I've got the 10 paintings for King Kong done. And I'm working on another book called Hyperborea by Clark Ashton Smith, old book. And it takes place in a prehistoric land of a great ancient city with mammoths running around. And the publisher offered it to me, and he said, can you do 13 paintings? We can pay you X amount. All right. Okay, cool. Like that. And what is considerable about these books is they're not just jobs. Both books are going to be done in this beautiful format where they're going to be books that you like to just hold in your hands because they're so nice. You know what I mean? They're just books that are cloth bound and leather slipcased. And that's what you want as a legacy when you leave behind that kind of thing, not just something that I worked in advertising. So that's what's important to me making a good painting, is that it stands the test of time, it stands the test of time, and it will be legacy. It will be something that is your legacy. And artists, some of us, we don't have children and stuff like that, and they say, well, what's your legacy? My legacy is my work, and it's touched the lives of a lot of people. It's in a lot of collections all over the world, and Japan, Australia, Europe, England, it's just everywhere. And so hopefully I'm going to be thought of and remembered for that in the future years. So that's kind of my legacy, and it's important for me to produce just do one more painting, really good painting, and that's what you have to say to yourself. And because time is short, life is a short thing, and you really don't know how long you've got. It's just it's interesting. You could live to 90, or something could happen in your 60s, and it's just and it's something you just don't like to think about, but this is what happens, and so it's making.
I wanted to ask you, because we had a great question just come in.
Sure.
It kind of connects to this idea of just the widespread appreciation for your work. And Carrie McNay just asked, as someone who has taught creative writing to children, I often use art as prompts, including what they might have themselves, like magic cards.
Sure.
So what she wants to know is, have you received a lot of, I guess, letters or correspondence from children or from people of all ages? Honestly,
I do. I received a lot
from kids, especially.
I've received a lot from children, and particularly a lot of kids, and they write and they say, I really like your dragons and your Godzillas. And it's definitely goes across some certain age lines. I really like, and the kids' letters really are special because, and the kids write, it's very special because the kids, they're exploring, and they're getting a sense of wonder about everything. And I believe we all have talent, and we all have a sense of wonder, but at a young age, and we all have it at a young age, all of us do. We all have the perception. And I had it when I was about 4. I was drawing on a chalkboard, and my father sat me down and showed me how to draw perspective and things of that nature. And I watch science fiction movies then too. And whether you keep that or whether you get ground down by the world as you get older, that's the thing. And people are like, at high school, let me tell you, I just discovered a yearbook from middle school from 1975 where my English teacher says, "Forget the monsters, Bob. This is English," like that. And I'm like, well, Mr. Lakey, I know you just passed away. I'm sorry, but I hope you can see what is around you. You know what I mean? It's like, I did it, you know, and people, they want to get you into this little place where it's like you got to fit into a box, and that's what destroys wonder and creativity. And it's an epic fight. Believe me, my mother helped me fight it. My father, he worked with me on things, but my mother really helped me. And you know, they're both passed away, but they helped me a lot. And yeah, it's keeping that sense of wonder alive, and it's keeping it alive so that you can say, okay, you know, you're still enchanted by the things that the child that you loved as a child, dinosaurs and the space and galaxies, and looking at Hubble Space Telescope photos and realizing we're in this galaxy that is so big, and this universe that is endless, and we're just atoms and stuff that's made of it. We are the as Carl Sagan would say, we are the cosmos realizing itself, you know.
We thank you so much for keeping that sense of wonder alive in all of us, because
I'm going to keep at it.
it's just extraordinary.
In life, and believe me, in the current times we've been in, we need that sense of wonder, because it's just crazy, and you know, and it affects me a lot. It has affected me, the you know, what's been going on. And don't think it doesn't. You sit and you think to yourself, wow, this is just crazy. And then you have to go back and say, well, what is it inspires me, and turn off the news and put on a Godzilla movie, you know what I mean, like that, you know. It's like, yeah, exactly. And that's the
best advice I've heard.
Yeah, turn off the news and put on something cool, you know what I mean. And you know, so you know, it's just it's important, and it's especially important, and I love teachers to support younger children in this endeavor, where they are going to want to educate and inspire. And you know, we've given, like, my wife and I, we presented a class. We had an elementary school I used to attend near here, and their budget was cut severely, so we went and bought $300 worth of art supplies for them. So
oh, that's wonderful.
And we just gave it to the school, and when we get to the school, to tell you how times are, you go through this whole gauntlet of security, and then all of a sudden, what do you want here? What do you want? I said, we're just going to give you some. So you know, we had to kind of really present ourselves correctly. And but yeah, my hat is off to teachers, and teach and inspire, because tomorrow, you know, these kids are going to be the ones that are going to, like, you know, they're coming into a world, and it's going to be a weird world, and they can change it.
Love that. That's a wonderful note to end on. We can't thank you enough for such a great evening.
Thank you so much
for being such an important part of our fantasy exhibition. It's such
Thank you so much for the show. It is phenomenal. I encourage everybody to go and see this. And if you can't get the book. The book is Enchanted, edited by Jesse Kowalski. And then it's going to tour 2 other museums, which is great. And you know, and everybody should see this. I'll get the word out on social media. You can follow me. I'm on Instagram, just Eggleton.Bob on Instagram. And then I'm also on Facebook, and I've got 5,000 friends, but you can still follow me publicly.
We all want to be your friend, Bob.
I'm on Twitter too. You know, and so I get it all out there. I get everything out there on social media. I really use it, and that's been a big tool for selling stuff too. I've met lots of great people, and people just pop up. They're like, "Hey, what paintings have you got?" It's like, "Oh, I got this, I got this, I got this." And he's like, "Oh, I'll take that one." I'm like, okay, good. That was a good day. That's a good day, you know. So, you know, it's important. Inspiration is important. It really is. Inspire people and pass the inspiration on. Don't succumb to jealousy or worrying about status or all that crap, because I mean, that's history's going to judge you. History will judge you. You know, look at Norman Rockwell. He's passed away, but his art is immortal, and it is part of history. And you just say Norman Rockwell, and it's a word, you know, it's a term, you know, it's Norman Rockwell. Frazetta, the same thing. It's part of history, and history judges them to be a great contributor to our human condition, and that's what's important. And I'm not worried about it now. And people call me, "Oh, Bob, you're a legend." I was like, maybe, yeah, but you know, come back to me in 100 years. We'll see.
Well, you are definitely a legend. There's no question about that. And thank you again. What a wonderful program.
Yeah.
Drew, I think you're going to kind of wind our evening up. And this wonderful program will live on online, which is
to the younger artists out there. I just say one thing: keep going at it. Keep drawing is the most important thing in the world. Draw, 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 and try to find your own muse. Don't worry about being the next Frank Frazetta, or don't worry about being the next Donato Giancola, or don't worry about being the next Bob Eggleton. No, find your muse and be you. Be you. Because that's what's going to make the difference in art. It really is.
Thank you. Before we wrap up with the slides, I just wanted to also say, Bob, thank you so much. I truly, on top of what you just said was great. It's just really been great listening to someone who's so passionate about everything they are, especially.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've got, it's just, I live an art life. It's in my blood. It's the way I view the universe, and I don't see it any other way. I've tried to see it other ways, but I don't see it any other way. So, and at the end, my parents were both so supportive, and even my dad, we were best friends before he died, and there was no animosity. There was you heard those people with father issues and parent issues, all that. That didn't happen here. This is like they were just them, and they were concerned, but in the end, they loved me, and I love them, and I'm honoring them by being successful. So that's the best thing I can do.
I have no doubt that they were extremely proud of you.
I think they are.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I think your passion spreads. And before we end, I just want to say, you can also please follow Bob on his social media and on his website at bobeggleton.com. Next Tuesday, we'll be talking with Julie Bell on August 17th at 5:30 p.m.
She's awesome.
And on Saturday, August 21st, we'll be having the Magic of the Trees Plein Air with Dan Howe from 1 to 4 p.m.
Cool.
And then on Saturday, August 21st, from 1 to 4 p.m., we'll have the 3rd annual Art of the Brewing Festival, as well as Raiders of the Lost Ark on Wednesday, August 25th from 6:30 to 10:30 p.m.
Dun, 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 dun.
And then feel free to check out the Enchanted, A History of Fantasy illustration exhibit that will be exhibited through October 31st, as well as the Land of Enchantment, our outdoor exhibit. And feel free to support this work by becoming a member at nrm.org. Thank you all for coming. There's been about 575 watchers here across all platforms. I want to thank you all for making this a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you again, Bob.